I want to bring in Elliot Williams, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General for Legislative Affairs, the Department of Justice, Glenn Kirshner, former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst, Carol Lamb, former United States Attorney for the Southern District of California, and Harry Litman, who's a former U.S. Attorney and Deputy Assistant Attorney General, now a contributing columnist to the Washington Post. It's a lot of resume, firepower there, and a lot of experience in the various institutions that are sort of tasked now. As a former SDNY prosecutor,
D.C. U.S. Attorney.
I'm sorry, D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. Tell me, Glenn, how you make sense of this timing, and particularly the point Nick said about the fact that there are, as a matter of public record, other loose strings that have not been tied up.
For a former career prosecutor, really hard to understand all of these loose ends because we seem to have been witness to so much crime in plain sight, obstruction and otherwise, that it leaves us wondering, how could it be that Mueller wrapped up his investigation without bringing additional charges? Now, I think it's worth talking about the standard by which we decide whether to bring a charge or not, and this is the standard Mueller operates under and we all operate under. We have to have a reasonable likelihood of success on the merits. It's a mouthful, but that's the standard. And what that means, we have to have a level of confidence that we can prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. A court has never put a numeric number on what beyond a reasonable doubt means, but it's about 95% of the evidence showing criminality. Now, you know, maybe Bob Mueller found that this was the gang that couldn't shoot straight. Ironically, if irony is still a thing these days, it could be that he found that they colluded. Why? Because collusion, it's not a legal term.
Right.
It's a layman's term when people get together to deceive or defraud somebody else.
Right.
But maybe he couldn't get over the hurdle of finding an actual agreement to commit a crime and an overt act toward committing that crime. That could be. Now, I will say, all the people who worked with and learned from Bob Mueller, in Bob we trust. So I think I've heard others, Chuck Rosenberg and Jim Comey, say it's about the process. And we're all confident that Bob Mueller has engaged in the process the way it should be handled. So I think we're going to have to wait for the results, and hopefully we're all going to have confidence in the results.
So, you know, I think what's striking, Chris, is how much energy the president has devoted to undermining the very institution of the special counsel and, frankly, law enforcement in general. And if you think about it, like if you remember the TV show Mad Men, one of the main lines was, if you don't like what people are saying, change the conversation.
Right.
And so rather than address any of the legal issues on the merits, it's attack the fact that Bob Mueller and Rod Rosenstein weren't elected officials and that he won a big election. This is all part of a long, now 2-3 year process of undermining institutions. He's gone after Congress. The president's gone after now, you know, the special counsel. We're going to see much more of that in the next few days. And it's undermining the very, very nature of our system of government. And I think, you know, in many respects, this is a 2020 strategy far more than a legal one. It's getting people behind the fact that our institutions are worthless and that the president can just attack them, and that this is all one giant deep state conspiracy that's worthless.
Although what's fascinating now, Carol, as I watch her reaction come in from, say, like, you know, here's Mitch McConnell saying, I am grateful we have experienced and capable Attorney General in place to review the special counsel's report. Attorney General Barr now needs the time to do that. You're going to see, I mean, after all of the undermining, right, depending on what the contents are and how much they are spinnable in favor of the president's innocence, ultimately, you're going to see a whiplash turn to bolster and celebrate the findings of what has been told to the base for 22 months is a totally corrupt witch hunt.
Yeah, and that's what's so very unusual about this whole situation. I mean, everybody on this panel knows that the lack of an indictment is not an affirmation of innocence, right? But, you know, one of the things that really strikes me about this whole scenario is that the special counsel regulations usually has to anticipate a situation where the special counsel, there's some antagonism or a lot of difference of opinion between the special counsel and the attorney general. But with Bill Barr and Bob Mueller, I don't think you have that situation. These two gentlemen are really cut from the same cloth, and you can see it in the way the delivery of the report was done, the careful coordination, you know, almost like a Japanese tea ceremony. Everything's planned down to the second, and these two men respect each other, and most of all, I think they're really concerned about the stability of the government. And you'll notice that the people who have been indicted, none of them were active members of the president's inner circle actively working in the government at the time. And so again, I think everyone on the panel knows the kind of scrutiny that would go into a decision to indict somebody who's actively at the highest levels of government. And I think, the likelihood is that both gentlemen here agreed that that was not the case, that there should be indictments at this point in time.
One other sort of loose thread I'm thinking about, Harry, and again, as someone who ran the U.S. Attorney's Office at one point in your life, cooperation agreement. So Michael Flynn has a cooperation agreement, obviously. And, I think a lot of people have thought, well, people cooperate and then it's in order to cooperate towards someone bigger than them. Michael Flynn's a pretty big fish in this whole thing. It doesn't seem that he played any part in Manafort, which is sort of the biggest prosecution. And yet he got a cooperation agreement that's sort of going to end up with him probably getting a fairly reduced sentence. What do you make of that?
Yeah. Look, the loose ends here are in some ways mysterious because they go to the heart of his investigation. Nothing bigger than Stone. Ben Wittes made this point a few minutes ago for you. It's one thing to give material to other offices. It's another when it seems central to your mission. Three kinds of information that we don't know what's going to happen with. Anything about the counterintelligence investigation, anything about declinations and what that was, and anything about the president. When Barr says in the third paragraph of his letter there's other information besides prosecution and declination that Rosenstein and he and Mueller will decide on, that's presumably the body of it. Mueller did not just give him a little list of whom he indicted and whom he declined to indict.
Is that your sense as well, Glenn?
It is. So, I had the privilege of actually trying a case, prosecuting a case that Bob Mueller investigated and indicted. It was the shooting of a police officer in Washington, D.C. He then passed it off to me because he became chief of homicide in D.C. And I can tell you, and this is not hyperbole, when I looked in those investigative boxes, I thought I knew how to investigate a case. I was a prosecutor for about 10 years at that point in time, and this was investigative genius. He literally started with the defendant's birth certificate and investigated everything moving forward, probably learning things about the defendant that he had forgotten about himself. Bob Mueller is thorough personified. Good.
And I think the greatest testament to that is the fact that we got the notification today that no major decision that he made was overruled by the Attorney General. Now this is all in the Attorney General's hands, and he made that firm commitment to err on the side of public disclosure. Congress voted 420, a very partisan Congress, went 420 to nothing to see that these findings be made public. Now it's in William Barr's hands, and is he going to live up to the commitment that he said that he would? We can
He's
all,
left himself room to go either way.
Sorry?
What's that, Harry?
He's left himself room to go either way. He can say, I've done it all by the regs, which doesn't require much to disclose, or he can give the bigger stuff about the investigation, the declinations.
Although we should say, Carol, that all the folks in the House, and Jamie Raskin made this point, and Jerry Nadler's made this point, and I should say that Jack Reed in his statement says that he urges Mr. Mueller to testify before Congress about the evidence he gathered, the scope of his work and his findings, which I think is going to be a call you're going to hear from a lot of Democrats, no matter what the report says. But Carol, that is a sort of backstop, I think, that Democrats in Congress are banking on should they feel that Barr essentially is a bottleneck here.
Yeah, they can do that, but neither Barr nor Mueller are individuals who call a lot of attention to themselves, and I don't know that they're going to get a lot more out of Bob Mueller than he's putting in that report. So but again, I don't see a lot of tension between these two. I could be wrong, and they may have some professional disagreements about the scope of executive privilege or the strength of the executive branch, but I think they're both extremely professional, and if Bob Mueller's called to testify, he'll testify. But he's probably put everything he can into that report, and I wouldn't be surprised, frankly, if they've coordinated with respect to maybe creating a section that Bob Mueller thinks can be disclosed. And then a section that has information he doesn't think can be disclosed. I mean, he could have put the report together that way.
Yeah, that's what Frank Figliuzzi sort of said, having worked with him, that he understood from the beginning what he was working towards, that a document that may have to have some sort of compartmentalization.
Yeah, he may have already scrubbed it and sort of given it to William Barr ready for disclosure.
And that's not uncommon.
What do you mean?
No, I don't think it's uncommon to compartmentalize. That,
Right.
there are portions that, either for national security reasons or criminal justice reasons or public sensitivity reasons, we might not want to disclose. So we see that sometimes.
All right. Elliot Williams, Glenn Kirshner, Carol Lamb, and Harry Littman, thank you all on this big day for making time to come on by here. That does it for us here at All In this evening. The Rachel Maddow Show, starting with the one and only Rachel Maddow, begins now. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Chris. How's your Friday going?
It's good. It's not quite as eventful as yours has been, but it's been good.
Thank you very much. Giving it away, as always. Thank you, my friend. Thanks to you at home for joining us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.